Innovation, the insidious Terran macro monster, is back for Game 2 of his match against Hyun in the GSL. This is Innovation at the peak of his power, folks. This is Innovation when he looked like nobody could touch him. This is Innovation when everyone thought he was sort of the brightest rising star, not named Flash, from the Brood War scene. It was Rain, Innovation, and Soul Key were the three most hyped guys coming from the Brood War scene into the Starcraft 2 scene whenever Heart of the Swarm came out in 2013, because Kespa, the Korean esports organization over there in Korea, who pretty much has a death grip on what the pro gamers can and can't do, they said, look guys, these S-class A-teamers, basically your Flash or J-dongs, you guys can't switch games, alright? We're going to need you in the Brood War Pro League still, but hey, you B-teamers, you guys can switch. So we had in the first, 2 years of the game, even though MVP seemed like a god, he was a legitimate A-teamer in Brood War, but he wasn't a top solo league MSL OSL winner. So that's part of why this era is so exciting, is everyone came over. The player base wasn't fractured at all. You essentially have no one playing Brood War. Whereas at the moment, you have a lot of the god tier Brood War legends have gone back to Brood War, or retired outright. Like your J-dongs, your Flashes, your Rains, they were playing in ASL, or at least they were a few seasons ago. So that's part of why this GSL is so exciting, and I'm revisiting this specific one, is because this is sort of like the all-star team, or like, I don't even know how to properly describe it, but this is what everyone really wanted to see, because this was the Gosus, the legends, and Innovation. We really saw what made him so great in the last game, because he just macroed so incredibly well, and it was really the tempo that I really noticed, and that's something that stood out to me beyond anything else. Because when I think of Zerg as the macro race, and when I think of Protoss, I think of Protoss as the build order race, and when I think of Terran as the tempo race. And whenever people play Terran now, a lot of what they do, namely the Hellbat push, can seem way more gimmicky, as Innovation really wants to scout going for the extra Reaper. I had a Freudian slip there, called them Beyond. Bjorn, of course, known for god-like Reaper micro, and is the guy that got the Reaper nerfed and pioneered 3-Rax Reaper. And Innovation's going to sneak some Reapers around, but thankfully he does pick up on those Hyun Zerglings, who are slow and scouting. And Hyun, I don't know if he's going to go for as quick of a third base. This third base, a little bit harder to defend than the Belshir one, because there were rocks for the pocket third, and a lot of Zergs would pretty much always take the 3 o'clock because it was so open. But anyway, this was a pretty open standard macro map, and if you were a Zerg player, this was one that would get picked a lot. But in my opinion, this map was good for Protoss and Terran too, because that third base, you could kill the rocks down to it, and then destroy a 500 HP rock tower to seal yourself in, and it was actually one of these maps that was very safe as far as third bases go for non-Zergs. Hyun is going for a Roach Warren here, and notice he's still yet to take his third, and Innovation made the second Reaper because Hyun was one of these Roach-centric players, sort of like a Losira or one of these more cheesy guys. He's not a DRG type that's going to go for Mutiling every game. And in this previous matchup against Gumiho that Innovation obviously watched as he waited, Hyun went for Roach builds. And in this time, because the harassment Hellion openers were so strong and this 3cc build was starting to be popularized by Innovation, this is the season where Innovation really sort of pioneered this build and said, look, if you think you're better than your opponent, you go Hellions. The Zerg answer to greedy Hellion play is Roach all in, Roach bust. There was one I really liked to do off of 2 base, Sheth build that was like a Roach Bane. There's a shitload of different variations. This one isn't a hardcore all-in, this is just a very aggressive play because he's taking a third and droning behind it, but he's really committed a lot to this because This isn't like a speed roach all in, and he's invested a shitload of gas into this, and he gets here. Innovation gets beautiful Hellion volleys off. Double Widow Mine is going to burrow here, and remember, they're not going to be visible after they shoot, and they're going to do a lot of splash. Perfect Hellion micro is, holy crap, this is completely decimated. What an insane hold, because if we consider 35 seconds ago, Innovation is just outside his natural. He sees, oh shit, roaches, and he has, what, 4 Hellions, a Marauder, and a couple mines coming? What did he do? Extra bunker, extra supply depot. This meant that all the Zerg stuff would have to come into his base single file. And this was actually more intelligent than doing a full wall, because he sort of invited, he's checking the third, it's not finished yet. He almost invited the Zerg to go, okay, run up this choke point, as opposed to if he had just made 4 buildings, the Zerg would have had to pick what to attack, and Innovation might not have been able to get him as much of a choke, but because he left him a little hole, the Zerg is going to just run in there every time, even if he's doing a Baneling all in. So he got a perfect Hellion volley off, ran him around the bunker, and remember, Marauders actually counter roaches very hard, especially slow roaches. Marauders just destroy. So then the Marauders were basically getting all the shots they could around the long wall in, and the mines come in and are put in a perfect spot, not too far up where they can be sniped, but far enough up where they not only protect the ramp, but also protect the natural. That was literally perfect. And I know a lot of you guys haven't experienced that exact build on this sort of meta or patch, and a lot of you don't even play Zerg or Terran. But whenever a Zerg does a build like that, it's one of the hardest things to do as Terran, to defend an oh shit a bunch of surprise roaches. And for me personally, that's one of the most irritating ways to lose, even into Legacy of the Void, is a bunch of, oh, he made like a big Roach Ravager bust off of 40 drones. This time, the Roach builds were more gimmicky and more fragile. There was no Ravager, as I think this Overseer is going to come out. Remember, this mine is extremely low on health. And there it goes. As I pointed out earlier, you didn't need drilling claws for mines to be invisible. Basically, Terran players started mine dropping Protoss so much. I mean, we still see it to this day. It's so freaking effective and so dangerous. Blizzard said, alright, well, Protoss has to go robo every game if we don't nerf the mine. So we're going to nerf the mine. And that's what they did. But at this time, the mine and the Hellbat were insidiously powerful, and you know what? It made for some god-tier Terran vs. Zerg. If you look at any era of the game, this, in my opinion, was the most exciting era and matchup. Mutiling Bling versus Bio Mine, because the mines had such insane splash. Every time the players would engage, something freaking cool was going to happen. Terran players had the equivalent of a supercharger because they got medevac boost, which basically enabled them to do things with bio and take insane risks that they weren't able to do in Wings. Protoss and Terran players had this complaint in Wings of Liberty, especially near the end, when the Infestor was really punishing, that we can't move out. If we move out and take a bad fight, we lose. So Protoss got recall, and Terran got the medevac boost. Lings are going to come forward here. Innovation will simply kite back, shred all the Lings, and then pick up, and then fly into the main. Again, whenever players opened Roach, since Ravagers didn't exist, they didn't scale, and you were stuck in this jokish position as Zerg, where you were just going to have to run around with Roach Ling and defend the speed-boosted medevacs, and Terran could just easily rip you apart with multitask. I actually like that spore, or that spine rather, down on the low ground. And look at this weird cameras, as more mines are going to come down and do crazy damage, but wow, I mean, it's just like a freaking fireworks show every time mines go off. Mutas are going to come out, and that will sort of curtail the damage that Innovation's going to be able to do. And notice how much of the creep has been punched out here. It's just very poor creep spread. Certainly doesn't have any map control with it. It's not spread properly to his third or fourth. And I don't know if it's because he was afraid of being spam dropped if he took the pocket fourth, but he took this top right fourth, which some guys going Muta elected to do, but this was one of those things that in the beginning of this map's life happened, but people really figured out how easy that pocket base was to defend. Innovation doesn't even freaking know that he has this base up in the top right. He's just going to push the bottom side and burrow mines, and look how many Marines he has on the high ground as everything gets popped. This isn't the highest quality possible, by the way. Innovation surges down the ramp, and notice his upgrades are always perfectly timed. They will finish before the Zergs, and Innovation pressuring up here into the natural. If he can get in here before the Banes, he's thinking he can break him, but no, unfortunately he will have to run away. Notice Innovation has taken a 4th base, continuing to grind the Zerg down. The Zerg is at an upgrade disadvantage, and mutiling when you're at one, like the Terran has a defense and armor upgrade against you and over you, that is absolutely brutal. Your units just do not trade for shit. And in this era, when you had to deal with mines and Hellbats too, it was absolutely insane how shredded you were going to get. And this really enabled TVZ to have a lot of exciting engagements, and the Terran player to throw away a shitload of armies and keep pressuring the Zerg. It felt like you couldn't really get a foothold sometime as Zerg, and a good Terran player would always keep you on the back foot. But as far as being a viewer, this was just the best era because it meant constant action as, again, Innovation deals 2 devastating blows at once, making the Zerg pick his favorite child at gunpoint with this beautiful drop play. And notice his macro is good enough where he's dropping so much of so many well-upgraded units that he's guaranteed to do damage. There was no way the Zerg could have properly allocated enough to defend both of those pushes microed like that. The Zerg 3rd is punched out badly. A lot of drones start to fall at the natural. Innovations is really 20 workers ahead. Just salting the wound here, as I'm almost certain he doesn't know about that top right base still, but it doesn't really matter. It's not mining effectively, and if he starts to saturate it, his workers just got up there, he's not really going to be able to mine that. His Innovation is just going to go for the jugular here. And if stuff rallies down, Innovation will be able to deduce what's going on. But again, Innovation's in this position where if he kills these morphing Banes, he's just going to straight win. And Innovation stimming, but a few Banes finish, and nice splits there, but Innovation does lose quite a bit. But keep an eye on the minimap in these retro Innovation games. You will just see a crapload of red flowing across the map. And the Zerg just barely holds, makes Banes with every link he has left, and is essentially out of larva, and the Overseer is out of place. So this is classic TVZ. We've seen non-stop action, multi-prong drop harass, and thankfully those Banes escape. But if he runs back up the ramp, oh lord, he's going to get splashed to shit. And he might just do that, as I think he might have just thought there were one, as oh my god. We can see the gnarly splash there. And Innovation is just ranging out, trying to get map control. And he has an insurmountable advantage at this point. This is a perfectly played macro game where you do a push, you micro well, and do damage. And Innovation is going to do the Starcraft equivalent of just jamming all of his chips in the middle. He's going to pull about 60 workers here and say, alright, at this point I am so ahead, I'm at 3-3, he's at 2-2, I have this fucking basically maxed out army. And if I pull all my workers, there is literally no way, based on the damage I've done and the larva he has, that he'll be able to hold. No way in hell. Fire every fucking streak. Damn the torpedoes. Hyun's trying to make skill Banes here, and Innovation is pulling back, doing a beautiful job, and he will just conclude the game here as the entire army lives, and Innovation masterfully wins with the cutesy little pull there. He actually did a similar move against Stefano, but Stefano was really going punch for punch with him, and it wasn't sort of a get out move like that. It was an absolutely masterful last ditch effort that won him the game, and Innovation is going to go on to do a rematch against Rain next, so make sure you sub for that.